Good evening, this is Matt Breland, and this is my presentation on Caribbean earthquakes and how they happen and how past events compare to the future. So before I get into it, I just want to explain how the plate formations lead to the earthquakes. There is a transform fault line that runs across the North American and the Caribbean plates, and there's also a subduction zone along the Caribbean and North American plates, and a strike slip fault that runs through Hispaniola, which was led to the speculation of the earthquake in Haiti. And so the islands that are at risk are Jamaica, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico. And the reason they're at risk is because there are a system of fault lines that create something known as the Gonave microplate, and that is a system of fault lines that work together that cause earthquakes in the eastern parts of Caribbean, and that leads to a strike slip fault in Jamaica and two strike slip faults in Hispaniola, and it also includes a trench in Puerto Rico. And so the primary fault zone for the earthquakes is known as the Enriquillo Plantain Garden Fault Zone, and this is it's a system of faults that work together it's a system of strike slip faults that collaborate and make earthquakes possible on these Caribbean islands. And so the Haiti earthquake was a magnitude 7.0 that happened in the beginning of January, and it killed over 300,000 people. The shaking was so violent and it caused a lot of destruction, and after a short period of time, two aftershocks struck the land too of about 5.0 magnitude, causing additional damage through the country. But what was weird about the quake is they thought that originally it was associated with the Enriquillo Plantain fault line, but there was no seismic evidence that it happened. There was no visible surface fracture. There was not much geological evidence that supported it being associated with that fault line. So a team of researchers from Purdue University determined that the earthquake's origin was a previously unmapped fault. They discovered that it was an underground fault under the city of Leogane, and it was a blind thrust fault. And they concluded that the earthquake was a result of the slippage of this fault line that had been dormant for a long time. And so that is what made them believe that more earthquakes could be possible within the Caribbean, because they noticed that an increase in seismic activity was occurring around the Puerto Rico areas and along the microplate. That seismic activity along the faults was increasing, and that led them to believe that another major earthquake could occur very soon as the stress continued to build along the fault lines. And so with their research, they came to the conclusion that since the Enriquillo Plantain fault line was not responsible for the Haitian earthquake, they came to the conclusion that it was still building energy and that the quake may have caused an extra delay in the release of that energy on the fault line. And so that led them to come to the conclusion that that pressure is still building on that fault line that could cause a very severe earthquake to occur in the near future, and blind thrust faults such as the one that devastated Haiti could still be lurking around the Caribbean islands that could cause future problems. And so another research that was done was on the Puerto Rico Trench, and that they noticed that a lot of downward force from the ocean was being exerted onto it, and that was causing further subduction underneath the North American plate, or further subduction of the North American plate under the Caribbean plate. And so that was leading to more speculation that a boundary system could be setting up, similar to how the boundary was in the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake scenario. And so with all of the mapping and geological studies were done, they came to the conclusion that this fault area, this plate boundary area could cause a very damaging earthquake in the near future. And so with all of this research being done and coming to the conclusion that the Caribbean was still very vulnerable for major earthquakes, and also with their population and their urbanization increasing, they decided that they needed to improve their efforts by developing a roadmap to help them map out as a community what steps needed to be taken in order for them to build sturdier buildings and have better communication systems for displaying earthquake information to other people around the country. And so, with the research that they had gathered from institutes in the Caribbean, seismic institutes, they discovered that yes, earthquakes are still going to happen in the Caribbean area that could cause very severe damage. And so they decided to create this roadmap to work with collaborators and implement reports and services to regard that the risk damages and that the preparedness and responses will benefit local, national, and regional levels in the public, private, and civil society sectors. So in conclusion, major earthquakes are still going to be likely in the Caribbean because of the tectonic structure that is set up there, and there is a lot of pressure being built, and there's a lot of speculation that a earthquake is building along that Enrico Plantain fault line because it did not release all of its energy that it had built up that they thought was associated with the Haitian earthquake. And so officials have been taking this information to make sure that they have better ways to research and prepare for the next big earthquake.